Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Thoughtful Salt, and I've been contracted to do a sort of main article slash video on a genre of games that has sprung up quite recently, only really coming to the forefront in the past 5 years ish. Ever since the release of Minecraft in 2009, the earliest alphas for that, there's been an explosion in popularity and releases, quite frankly, of games in a genre that I like to call Emergent Exploration, or MX for short. Now, these kinds of games have been titled, sarcastically, walking simulators, and I'm going to go through, because I have to capture footage for these games so I can make the big video about them, I'm going to play through them, maybe analyze them a bit, try and find out what makes them work and stuff. So we're going to start off this research slash critical series with the granddaddy of the entire genre, arguably the most symbolic example anyone thinks of when they think of the term walking simulator, or in the future hopefully emergent exploration. I mean, bit of ego talking, but I'm hoping that this takes off, because genres, I think, are important for consumers. It's a nice, convenient shorthand, and it gives them a sense of information about what a game is about. And unfortunately, I've found that searching through games like Dear Esther, it's filled with unhelpful just genre descriptions and stuff. Like, I've seen Stanley Parable labeled as an adventure game, which it is not. I've seen it labeled as a first-person interactive exploration game, which is an entirely overcomplicated way of describing the thing. And then sometimes people just call them exploration games, and it's like, well, exploration is a mechanic. Lots of games feature exploration. Like, I was playing Saints Row 4. I've been playing the hell as Saints Row 4 for the past couple days. And the majority of the time I've been playing the game for the past couple days has been spent exploring the level, collecting all the collectibles, causing mayhem, and the emergent narratives that come with that, such as fighting off all the enemy forces that are alerted to your presence at that point. But I guess we should stop delaying the inevitable, and I guess we should get into Dear Esther. I should note that this is one of my favorite games of all time. And hopefully through the duration of this video, you find out why I think that. Now, this will probably be a lengthy video. This game takes around 2 or 3 hours at max to finish, so let's dive in. First, I want to show you the options that I'm playing with, just so you know what limitations I'm working with. I'm playing in 720p resolution right now because, quite frankly, Macs aren't built for gaming, so I'm forced to lower the settings down to absolute medium. Advanced video, I got some anti-aliasing invoked. My mind was stumbling over the words there. I got trilinear filtering. I don't know exactly what the filtering differences are between anisotropic, trilinear, and bilinear, but I just put it on trilinear. Just try and get as much out of this Mac as I could. Now, of course, this was all tested beforehand, so the frame rate wasn't suffering too much when I tested it out before I started recording this video, but we'll see if it actually, if the frame rate chugs. Now, this is a very demanding game. When you have the settings all the way up, the frame rate chugs it's like a slideshow at some points. But the game still is absolutely gorgeous, and it kind of justifies its existence and its frame rates when you take a look at the thing in full 1080p glory. So, let's start this analysis. Beacon, the caves, the buoy, the lighthouse. You can select any of these chapters out of order, but I'm going to start at the very beginning at the lighthouse. Play this chapter? Yes. I first started noticing, as a bit of background, actually I'm going to wait until he says his spiel.
Dear Esther, I sometimes feel as if I've given birth to this island. Somewhere between the longitude and latitude, a split opened up, and it beached remotely here. No matter how hard I correlate, it remains a singularity, an alpha point in my life that refuses all hypothesis. I return each time leaving fresh markers that I hope, in the full glare of my hopelessness, will have blossomed into fresh insight in the interim.
Alright, so, Dear Esther thus begins. Now I should point out that I'm using a mouse and keyboard setup. I have found, and you may have noticed it there when I immediately turned around, I have found that mouse control in this game actually leads to a lot of janky movements, and for the longest time I thought those were frame rate issues, but it turns out that's the mouse. Like the digital movement, it's actually moving down as I move this mouse diagonally, pixel by pixel, instead of like in a smooth line. So I actually recommend playing this game with a controller. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be playing with the keyboard and mouse setup that I have here. Alright. There's a zoom function. Anyways, let us begin. So we start off on this beach, and I'm going to do a slow cinematic walk up. And you start off beside the derelict lighthouse. Now there is actually a tiny little detail that was pointed out in a video that I watched, where you can go inside this lighthouse, and if you go very, very quickly, you can catch a ghost. You saw that little head up at the very top there? He was looking down at us? Yeah, you can catch one of the ghosts that are seen around this island. And you can also catch this chemical description, which... hydrogen, oxygen, carbon? Hydrogen... I don't know the name of the element, I'm just... This painting on the wall, this sort of visual motif shows up throughout the game in very specific places. This lighthouse is, I think, the very first instance where you can actually see it. I'm not quite sure if there's an area before you enter this lighthouse where you can see those yet. Oh my god. It looks like I tripped over something there. And what a filthy, filthy location. Now, a lot of people, when they approach this game, they approach it from the perspective of, hey, this is kind of like Myst, isn't it? And they could be forgiven for thinking that. I mean, you start off on an island alone, and you must explore that island to find out the meaning of the island, so to speak. Yep. I'm just checking out the frame rate, making sure it's all good, and yep, you can see the frame rate is relatively stable, so hopefully this will be a smooth experience for you viewers. I know on YouTube the video will be compressed and the frame rate will be more consistent, so you won't notice as much jank, but hopefully this is a smooth experience for you, as it is for me. So I'm going to be attempting to get some of the best cinematic views possible while playing this game, so for the purposes of the video. So you saw the path leading up there. You can actually go down here, and once you reach the end of this path down the beach, you'll trigger another scripted line reading from the actor. Now, I should point out that the lines that he says are somewhat randomized. I've seen the script of this game, the lines that the actor is supposed to speak, and there's not too many. Like, you read the script and it's like, oh, so it's randomized, but there's only like a couple of instances in the game where that'll actually make any difference at all. But I have noticed in multiple playthroughs different readings being given, different lines being read at certain moments, sometimes no lines at all being read, though that may have been a bug or a glitch, I don't know.
At night, you can see the lights sometimes from a passing tanker or trawler. From up on the cliffs, they are mundane. But down here, they fugue into ambiguity. For instance, I cannot readily tell if they belong above or below the waves. The distinction now seems banal. Why not everything and all at once? There's nothing better to do here than indulge in contradictions whilst waiting for the fabric of life to unravel.
Alright, so now there's this odd symbol, which I'm forced to believe after all these playthroughs is sort of like a roadmap of the narrator's trip through Damascus. I'm not quite sure if that's the correct interpretation though, but this game leaves a lot to interpretation, it should be said. And, well, that's what the interpretation I'm getting from the symbols like this. Because, really, what else can you say? Because that's like a definite stop, and that could, those two arrows leading off to the left of that main arrow there, could be the survivors of the wreckage. Spoiler alert, this is a critical Let's Play, and it's going through the entire game. There will be massive spoilers, but these could be the two survivors of the wreck that caused this narrator's predicament. So let's just move over here, just so I can show you off some of the gorgeous lighting. Now, I made that comparison to Myst, but the developer of the game, and forgive me
Dear
for
Esther,
actually...
I found myself to be as featureless as this ocean, as shallow and unoccupied as this bay, a listless wreck without identification. My rocks are these bones, and a careful fence to keep the precipice at bay. Shot through me caves, my forehead a mount. This aerial will transmit into me so. All overexposed, the nervous system, where Donnelly's boots and yours and mine still trample. I will carry a torch for you. I will leave it at the foot of my headstone. You will need it for the tunnels that carry me under.
Okay, so now that that's done. Forgive me for not actually remembering the names of the developers and stuff, but I'll try and point out exactly who I'm talking about, but forgive me for not knowing the names. The only name I currently have memorized on the dev team is Jessica Curry, who composed the amazing score for Dear Esther, and in fact I named it one of my favorite scores of all time because it's beautiful. It's like a beautiful score. I don't think anyone's ever been able to find anything negative to say about the music of this game, and rightfully so. But going back to what I was saying about Myst, the comparisons between this game and Myst, the developer actually said that he hated Myst. And he said that it was much better in theory than it was in practice. And he said it was because of the puzzles that existed in Myst. Like the whole notion of solving puzzles to figure out what was going on the island kind of rubbed him the wrong way. So now I'm going to set up a nice little cinematic shot, get the horizon all matched up, and go. Oh shit, I gotta get a good straight line. And go. Nope, no. And go. So he actually said that he hated Myst and everything. Which struck me as kind of odd, because when you look at Myst, and I seem to be clipping... Oh no, I wasn't clipping through, I was just about to stop at it. I seem to be clipping through the fence. Another nice cinematic shot. Please.
A wonderful sight. The moon cresting the junction between the cliff path and the stone circle. It cast a shadow of the ridge across the beach, all the world as if you had signed your name in untidy handwriting.
Alright, so now that he's done talking. What was I saying? Oh yeah, Myst. You can look at the concept of Myst. Oh. More narration.
When someone had died or was dying, or was so ill they gave up what little hope they could sacrifice, they cut parallel lines into the cliff, exposing the white chalk beneath. You could see them from the mainland or the fishing boat, and know to send aid or impose a cordon of protection, and wait a generation until whatever pestilence stalked the cliff paths died along with its hosts. My lines are just for this, to keep any would-be rescuers at bay. The infection is not simply of the flesh.
Now, that is the clearest line, I think, of my main theory about the narrative of this game. That this whole game is essentially one long suicide note. Now, it could be that the narrator is suffering from a specific illness that also carries with it certain mental illnesses and effects. But I have a sneaking suspicion in the back of my mind every time I play this that this is one long suicide note, and that makes the last 5 or 6 minutes of the game especially poignant for me. Anyways, Myst. You can see, basically Dear Esther is what Myst should have and could have been had it not had puzzles. You can see the obvious parallels too. I mean, Dear Esther, even today, is on the cutting edge of visual technology. This is like 2 or 3 years now after its initial release. Actually, four or more years if you count the mod that this was originally released as. It's all about exploring a lonely island by yourself. The obvious templates are there for this game in Myst. It's just that Myst was hampered by, I would say, design philosophies of its time, whereas Dear Esther really emerged in a really fertile bed of independent creativity and game development. So we're just going to move down the cliffs now. Now I have detail foliage on, which means that a lot of these flowers and stuff will appear within a certain distance ratio, I believe. The frame rate's starting to choke a bit, but you can see what a difference the detail foliage makes to this section of the game. Without the detail foliage here, it's actually quite barren.
I quote directly, a motley lot with little to recommend them. I have now spent 3 days in their company. That is, I fear, enough for any man not born amongst them. Despite their tedious inclination to quote scripture, they seem to me the most godforsaken of all the inhabitants of the Outer Isles. Indeed, in this case, the very gravity of that term, forsaken by God, seems to find its very apex. It appears to me that Donnelly, too, found those who wander this shoreline to be adrift from any chance of redemption. Did he include himself in that, I wonder?
I'm just gonna walk along this fence and get another cinematic shot, because this is really, when you look at the visual composition of all the levels in Dear Esther, it's really quite stunning. It's like each individual section of the game is like a showcase for masterful visual design. But definitely the game needs a beefy kind of computer to be able to showcase what makes it look so gorgeous as well. Because I mean, these textures, this game is going to age. Like, I bet you any money 10 years from now this will look as old and dated as Myst does to us now. But you got to admit, still kind of a beauty in these 2D sprites that are these plants. Nice little touch of the butterflies and everything too. Now, you can go down this section and you'll see a shipwreck right about there. I think this is the boat the narrator came in on. Or you saw the shattered lifeboat right next to the lighthouse tower. Ooh, is that a ghost over there? Is that? No, I think... Oh, no, I think it's just one of those posts. It looked like one of the ghosts. Another great example of the visual design of this. I mean, just it's almost
Dear
like...
Esther,
What?
I met Paul. I made my own little pilgrimage. My Damascus, a small semi-detached on the outskirts of Wolverhampton. We drank coffee in his kitchen and tried to connect to one another. Although he knew I hadn't come in search of an apology, reason or retribution, he still spiraled in panic, thrown high and lucid by his own dented bonnet. Responsibility had made him old. Like us, he'd already passed beyond any conceivable boundary of life. I find myself increasingly unable to find that point where the hermit ends and Paul and I begin. We are woven into a sodden blanket, stuffed into the bottom of a boat to stop the leak and hold back the ocean. My neck aches from staring up at the aerial. It mirrors the dull throb in my gut where I am sure I've begun to form another stone. In my dreams, it forms into a perfect representation of Lot's wife, head over her shoulder, staring along the motorway at the approaching traffic, in a vacuum of fatalistic calm.
Alright. So, most times when I actually come down to this cave, the narrator doesn't actually speak. So that was interesting to listen to. Now, what he just said in that speech was like, I think he has kidney stones or something, or a stomach ulcer, or something that, or an infection that deals with the gut. And that may be what this symbol represents, because you can see that's a pretty clear representation of a cell. I don't know what the cell is doing. It might be being torn apart, as it were, at the tail end of that drawing there. Then you can see these are all with phosphorescent paint. It's almost like this guy is trying to find some light at this particular junction of his life. Now, I gotta mention that there is some vague kind of like dissociation. We may not be playing as the narrator. I'm not quite sure. We may be playing as someone who simply discovers his suicide note or one of his diaries. I'm not quite sure. Forgive me if you know the actual answer to that question. Are we playing as him? Are we playing as some random dude that wanders onto the island? Are we playing as a bird, as it were? But nice little detail here of living space. Now, these symbols along the walls here, you can see that's a chemical symbol. Maybe it's a reaction of certain medications he's trying to represent here. I don't know what this is. It looks like an upside down octopus, but this I can see almost like as a representation of the tree of life. That's what I get out of that symbol. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's just, with the amount of stuff that this game leaves to interpretation, well, interpret it however much you want, right? This combination of the cell structure found over there, put over here, and this tree of life over here. So, life connected to mortality of cells? I don't know. We're going to exit this cave so we can continue on this mission. This is actually the shortest section of the game, I believe. Usually every time I play it, it takes me like 5 or 10 minutes to complete it at most. But since I'm trying to showcase the game for the viewers and to capture some decent footage for the video that I'm going to be making covering this genre, it's taking considerably longer right now. Seagull. Very important visual metaphor for this as well. Props up throughout the rest of the game, particularly near the end. And you can see it's actually heading right towards the beacon. And here's Jessica Curry's amazing piano theme for the game chiming in. And you can see just the lighting of this part. It's like the slow
I dreamt I
opening
stood
up.
in the center of the sun, and the solar radiation cooked my heart from the inside. My teeth will curl, and my fingernails fall off into my pockets like loose change. If I could stomach, I'd eat, but all I seem capable of is salt water. Were the livestock still here, I could turn feral and gorge. I'm as emaciated as a body on a slab, opened up for a premature source of death. I've rowed to this island in a heart without a bottom, all the bacteria of my gut rising up to sing to me.
Now, the path leading to the beacon, exactly on the straight path to it, is another representation of a chemical symbol. It might be medication that he's taken for antidepressants, because right now, after hearing that, I'm like, man, this guy's seriously depressed, and it's killing him. And he's allowing lots of bad stuff to happen to him. And as someone who just recently went through a major stage of depression, I can both empathize and completely understand that sort of mindset. Now, I think there was a Bible stationed here somewhere. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know where the Bible is. It might be another similar site. It might be later on, so I'll just go that way. But really, in terms of visual design, Dear Esther, I think not in terms of graphics, not in terms of the realism of the textures or anything. I think this game, despite what I said about it aging visually earlier, I think in terms of overall art direction, it'll age better than, well, most games released today. And really, this game is actually, I'm going to point this out, point out something about the walking itself later on. After this next mission loads, then I'll start talking about it.
Dear Esther, I have now driven the stretch of the M5 between Exeter and Bristol over 21 times. But although I have all the reports and all the witnesses, and have cross-referenced them within a millimetre using my Ordnance Survey maps, I simply cannot find the location. You'd think there would be marks to serve as some evidence. It's somewhere between the turn-off for Sanford and the welcome brake services, but although I can always see it in my rear-view mirror, I have as yet been unable to pull ashore.
So, now, in the first mission of this, I described the walking. So the walking of this game is actually, it's at a very deliberate kind of like velocity. I almost said philosophy there, but it could kind of work for that too. It's a very, ooh, there's a buoy out there. A buoy. Now, I like the way that this game utilizes beacons as sort of like a visual kind of like guide for the game. So like you can see, this game wants you to head in that direction, because this is the first thing you see walking out of this section of the mountain. That blinking light there. It's not the red beacon in that direction, it's a blinking light in the distance over there. So going back to the thing about walking, it allows you to set up these really cinematic shots, and this game is cinematic without being cinematic like in the sense of Beyond Two Souls was cinematic. This is cinematic in the sense that you are a cameraman, that you are the cameraman yourself, moving at a very deliberate pace towards the end point. Now, if you look closely, and most people notice this playing this game, but if you look, a lot of people don't. If you look closely as I walk ahead here, you'll see a mysterious figure in the distance. Yep, you can see a faint shadow. I might enhance this in the video for you, my viewers, just so you can get a closer look at that. But I think that's Esther. I keep pronouncing that wrong. Dear Esther. Dear Esther.
I've begun to wonder if Donnelly's voyage here was as prosaic as it was presented. How disappointed not to have found the bones of the holy man. No wonder he hated the inhabitants so. To him they must have seemed like barnacles mindlessly clinging to a mercy seat. Why cling so hard to the rock? Because it is the only thing that stops us from sliding into the ocean. Into oblivion.
That was very weird segment by that narrator. It's very kind of like philosophical. Like I said, this is a very emotional game, so it touches on a lot of subjects where people won't understand. Like, it's very difficult to get to another person's shoes in any situation. Now, I like the way this part is designed. So, first you go this direction because of this blinking light. Then once you reach this dead end and realize that what you were looking at was a ghost, you turn around and you see that. That is beautiful. That's amazing. Look at that. I love that. Now we shall go in that direction. Now, I just want to point out, The Great Gatsby has a blinking light at the end of a pier as a major visual metaphor. In that case, the light is actually green. So I'm actually gonna slowly go diagonally down here. But I think this game has the same sort of visual connection as The Great Gatsby has populated our imagination with. That light is... I don't know if it's the narrator's salvation or his exit sign so he could reconnect with Esther in the afterlife, or so he hopes. Just another cinematic shot for you viewers, just so you can have a good show when I make the actual video. Now, this shipwreck has nothing to do with anything. Like, nothing. It's there, and a lot of people have jumped on that. It's like, well, there's a lot of dead ends in this game, things that have nothing to do with anything. I'm trying to find a justification for it, and I think it's just to... connect the isolation of this character on this island to the outside world. This decaying wreck is his connection to the outside world. His links to the outside world have decayed to the point where they are wrecked. I know that might be reaching, but it's with this game, the amount of... It leads to interpretation. Well, that's one way to interpret things, isn't it? Also, if this thing was aiming for the lighthouse, it missed. That's all I can say. Boom, boom, boom. Now, I should point out another thing. This game started off as a Half-Life 2 mod, and the ship itself is actually reminding me a tiny bit of the models used in Half-Life 2. Now, it could be that these are... It did start off as a Half-Life 2 model for a wrecked ship with all the cargo that surrounds it. Or it could be that they just took that model and put a newer skin on it, or it could be that the boat was just completely redesigned for the mod. I don't know, I haven't played the mod. I'm trying to look for some footage of it that I can use in the video, hopefully for research. But as of now, I haven't played the mod, so I don't know if that was there or not, so... I just thought I would comment on it. What is... Oh, that's just a rock. With barnacles.
There must be a hole in the bottom of the boat. How else could new hermits have arrived?
Neither did he exit nor drink nor drive. Neither did he eat nor drink. Oh, okay. Huh, okay, so he took the time, whoever took the time to write that message on there. Neither did he... Yep, definitely about his links to the outside world. He is so isolated he can't even eat or drink. And there's another boat here, too. It might be his boat, one of the boats he arrived on, or it might be just a totally unrelated boat. But yet again, another symbol of this narrator's isolation from the outside world. Man, I'm reaching a lot of ammo. Forgive me if I seem to be reaching a lot for digging perhaps too deeply into this game, reading between the lines a bit too much, but I find this a very fascinating game. It's like, yes, it is vague. Yes, all you do is press forward. But it does more with that than most games I play today. It's like, it makes...
I had kidney stones, and you visited me in the hospital.
So he does
After
have
the
kidney
operation,
stones, okay.
when I was still half submerged in anesthetic. Your outline and your speech both blurred. Now my stones have grown into an island and made their escape, and you have been rendered opaque by the car of a drunk.
Yes, that was actually a very, very powerful line. I want to give all credit to the actor. I forget his name. Oh, God. I suck at this. Let's go look at some rock textures. Yep, those are rocks. Alright. This game makes the very act of moving forward meaningful, because this guy's trying to move forward through the wreckage of his life to his final end. And in a way, I think that
When I
ties
first looked into
the
the
theme of this
shaft,
game.
I swear I felt the stones in my stomach shift in recognition.
Can you actually go off that?
Come back.
Holy shit! Oh, that's something completely new that I always thought there was an invisible wall that would block you from going off that. It's interesting. Come back. It's almost as... Wow, that is... I'm actually been thrown for a loop there. So the character did actually die there, but it didn't. It just continued the narrative. So that's one of the defining characteristics of this emergent exploration genre. Besides the actual exploration itself, is the fact that character death does not irrevocably end the narrative. So what I mean by that is, in a lot of games where you die, you'll die. Like, the character's dead. Then they'll restart you at a checkpoint some ways back, and it's like you have to replay up to that point in the narrative again. Now, Dear Esther just pulled one of the hallmarks of the genre in that death didn't irrevocably end the narrative. Its failure state did not definitively end the narrative for that version of the character before he fell into that hole. It did actually continue the story. It did actually continue the experience. So that was interesting. Alright, so let's go up this hill, which has one of the best tracks in the game attached to it. One of the top 3, I think. I shall let you listen. Now, I just want to pause here before we start up the hill, before the music starts. I want you to pay attention to that house, and I'll try and keep my camera focused on it as much as possible because it is situated nicely for cinematic purposes. But there is another mysterious figure wandering in and out of that, so watch for that.
I've begun my ascent on the green slope of the western side. I've looked deep into the mountain from the shaft and understood that I must go up and then find the way under. I will stash the last vestiges of my civilization in the stone walls and work deeper from there. I'm drawn by the aerial and the cliff edge. There is some form of rebirth waiting for me there.
So, that last line, some form of rebirth, a lot of people refer to death as just the beginning.
The bothy was constructed originally in the early 1700s. By then, shepherding had formalized into a career. The first habitual shepherd was a man called Jakobsen, from a lineage of migratory Scandinavians. He was not considered a man of breeding by the mainlanders. He came here every summer whilst building the bothy, hoping eventually that becoming a man of property would secure him a wife and a lineage. Donnelly records that it did not work. He caught some disease from his malcontented goats and died 2 years after completing it. There was no one to carve white lines into the cliff for him either. 3 cormorants seen at dusk. They did not land. His house built of stone, built by a long-dead shepherd. Contents: my camp bed, a stove, a table, chairs, my clothes, my books. The caves that score out the belly of this island, leaving it famished. My limbs and belly famished. This skin, these organs, this failing eyesight. When the battery runs out in my torch, I will descend into the caves and follow only the phosphorescence home.
Now, I'm fixated on this book for some reason because I just noticed that detail. I never actually noticed this detail in most of my playthroughs. I've finished this game like 5 or 6 times. I've never noticed that detail. So you learn new things every day. But I just want to note that this seems to be death leading a person through... He's leading him by the hand. You can see he has his hand, and he's leading him somewhere. This could be like, this image is probably Dear Esther in a nutshell right here. The themes that I think it's approaching, someone coming to terms with their life. Is this really us being led, or are we being led by an unseen force, perhaps to our inevitable fate? There we go. That's my little get out of that detail. You can see a candle, brief glimpse of a candle there, so that indicates that we want to go in that direction. That area will disappear from view as we head down these cliffs, and the only source of light will be coming from these caves, I believe. And there are a couple more ghosts somewhere. I'm just trying to find out where they are. They might be down further. But I'm just going to explore this area a bit so we can talk more about this structure here. This upside down octopus, I don't quite know what it represents, so I'm not going to speculate on it, because I just don't know what it represents. Maybe if I ever get to interview the developers, I'll ask them specifically what that symbol means. But you can see, wow, that is quite a view. Now, one of the common criticisms of games like this is, why don't you just go outside and walk? This is a walking simulator. Why are you not, going outside and viewing nature? I live in Vancouver, my friend. It's one of the most beautiful cities in the world. I can go outside and walk anytime I want. But you still have to appreciate beauty wherever you find it. And this game is, quite simply, it can be striking. It's gorgeous. It stands with the best of them. This is despite all these rocks and everywhere, giving a gray palette to a lot of the game, but it just utilizes its art direction so well. It's astounding when you look at this game multiple times just to see all the little details and stuff. This is a neat little symbol. I think it symbolizes the fracturing of a personality, of a psyche, after a traumatic event, because you can see the definite stops each there, and you can see that eventually all these things stop. All the arrows stop somewhere, and a couple little arrows lead off of each one. Could that be the soul? Could that be a new beginning? Who knows? And actually, there's a nice little detail behind this. If you go up behind here, this is a makeshift grave, I believe. Now, I thought it was an Inukshuk, and if you don't know what an Inukshuk is a rock structure built by tribes living in the far north of Canada, like northern Canada, the Inuit, and they use it to locate themselves in the tundra, because without trees, it's almost impossible to actually find your way in a lot of places in the tundra. And Inukshuks are meant to point the way towards civilization. But this could be a grave, this could be a pointer, who knows. Now, of course, this house was built by a man who died of disease, trying to better his life or move on, trying to improve his position in life. A parallel to our current situation? I'm not sure, because he was trying to improve his life, whereas we are moving towards our inevitable demise. I do believe... No? Okay. We shall orient on the horizon.
What to make of Donnelly, the laudanum and the syphilis? It is clearly not how he began, but I've been unable to discover if the former was a result of his visiting the island or the force that drove him here. For the syphilis, a drunk driver smashing his insides into a pulp as he stumbled these paths, I can only offer my empathy. We're all victims of our age. My disease is the internal combustion engine and the cheap fermentation of yeast.
Okay, so he lost Esther to a drunk driver. he's sympathizing with this man who died of a disease helplessly. I mean, this is a narrator.
They found Jakobsen in early spring. The thaw had only just come. Even though he'd been dead nearly 7 months, his body had been frozen right down to the nerves and had not even begun to decompose. All around him, small flowers were reaching for the weak sun. The goats had adjusted happily to life without a shepherd and were grazing freely about the valley. Donnelly reports they hurled the body in fear and disgust down the shaft, but I cannot corroborate this story.
So, despite this being like largely a journey of one character, he's relating other characters' experiences, like the person who built that house at the top of the hill, Donnelly, Esther. He's relating a lot of things. There's a lot of character depth and stuff that goes into this game. It's really... Even now I'm learning new things about the characters and stuff as I'm listening to this man ramble on. And he was talking about the guy who suffered from syphilis.
Climbing down to the caves, I slipped and fell and have injured my leg. I think the femur is broken. It is clearly infected. The skin has turned a bright, tight pink, and the pain is crashing in on waves, winter tides against my shoreline, drowning out the ache of my stones. I struggled back to the bothy to rest, but it has become clear that there is only one way this is likely to end. The medical supplies I looted from the trawler have suddenly found their purpose. They will keep me lucid for my final ascent.
Yep, definitely a suicide note, man. There's no other way you can interpret that along with the rest of this journey. This is just him justifying it. A Hebridean history. I'm trying to locate that map geographically in the world, but I can't quite place it. Yes, as you can see, with my relatively low-end machine, the textures, when you look at them up close, aren't the most impressive. But like I said, I don't look at games in terms of graphical prowess a lot, unless they specifically bill themselves as being the top-of-the-line sort of thing. Even then, I look at overall art design. I mean, you can just look at this section. I mean, god damn, that is... I don't know what, it just evokes something in me, okay? So sue me, I like this game. So, the motif of disease rampaging through men's bodies and destroying them is prevalent throughout this game. The syphilis, the effects of alcohol on the human body causing drunk driving, which causes Dear Esther's death, essentially. And this man, the disease of depression, just whittling him away to a nub, and he can't see any other way out other than the inevitable end at the beacon. So now we shall head into the caves. And the one bright source of light, there you have it. Visual shorthand in this game. Isn't it lovely? I wonder if I can climb up here a tiny bit. Nope. So, yeah, that's a... yeah. Now, Dear Esther, when I call it Emergent Exploration, what I mean by that is, like, it just doesn't just consist of open world, walking simulators, to use a term to relate to people who know these sorts of games and prefer to call them that, like open world games like Proteus. It can consist of tightly controlled linear narratives. I mean, the Stanley Parable, when you go through some of the narrative choices in a certain way, can be linear as all hell, it can be open world as all hell, and it executes both equally well. Dear Esther is probably one of the most tightly controlled narratives of the genre. There are a few other examples that control the narrative even more tightly than this. Like, there's a title called 4 p.m., for instance, which is a short narrative-driven game exactly like this in almost every way, except for setting, of course. But it has all the hallmarks of the genre. It's just incredibly short, and it's a tightly controlled narrative. 30 Flights of Loving, which is a title I also include in this genre, is also very, very tightly controlled. So Emergent Exploration doesn't just consist of open world games. It can consist of linear titles like Dear Esther. The difference being that these linear and open world games, the events in them, all the interactions with them are triggered in some part by exploration. That's the core thing that unites games like Dear Esther with games like Proteus, or games like Jazzpunk, which we'll get to those later in this research marathon that I'm having. So let's jump into this hole and begin part 3.
Donnelly's addiction is my one true constant. Even though I wake in false dawns and find the landscape changing and flowing in constantly through my tears, I know his reaching is always upon me.
Now this cave system is actually gorgeous. Like, I don't know any other way to put this. I mean, look at that. Like, fuck. Most games would kill to have art direction this amazing. The candle. Now, throughout this section of the game, there will be these fluorescent paint symbols once again displayed throughout. No, I'm actually gonna get... Oh, wait, that's a good shot right there. Cinematic shot. Alright, and we'll set up another shot over here. Cinematic shot. I mean, look at that. That is the contrast, I mean, between the yellow light of the candle and the blue lighting over here, caused by the fungus, I think, is amazing. It's just amazing. And then you move into a green area. It's a nice palette shift. Phosphorescent mushrooms. It's just, if you find that I'm actually at a loss for words in this section, it's because I like looking at this section of this game. It's something to behold. I'm just gonna back up again. Nice shot of that.
They'd stop the traffic back as far as the Sandford Junction and come up the hard shoulder like radio signals from another star. It took 21 minutes for them to arrive. I watched Paul time it to the second on his watch.
Now this section of the game is absolutely splattered with these phosphorescent symbols, and you can see a lot of them are like, there's lots of paint splotches, like he was frustratedly throwing paint at the walls at this point, trying to vainly understand what was going on. Is that a representation of Esther? Lots of mechanical symbols, which I believe might be diagrams of an engine, because you can see a lot of common electrical symbols right there, like resistance symbols and all that, funneled throughout this area. So this could be an engine, like he's trying to contemplate the engine of the car that crashed into the car that was holding him and Esther. That's what I'm getting from this at any rate. More of the cell symbolism. More diagrams, electrical diagrams. There's a lot of stuff to take in this exact section. Oh, I'm actually gonna take the time to set up another shot here. But you can see, even with, like, if you get up close, you can see that the textures are not exactly the best. I mean, the collective appeal of all this is like, oh my god. Alright, time to continue this. Now, it is important to note that you can't actually see any part of your body in this game. Could this be him reliving his moments up to his suicide? I don't know. You do seem to have a couple of physical effects in the game world, though, so that theory may be shallower than than I initially thought as I was saying that sentence, but it's food for thought nonetheless. That was a definite... Oh, yes, the best looking part of this game, hands down. Oh my god. Just the lighting effects in general make this game so beautiful. Whew. Forgive me, that I was just overwhelmed. Alright, so we move forward into the pool. Now I'd like to point out the sound design in this game. The sound design of this game is exemplary. It manages to create this effective sense of isolation and yet beauty. I mean, just listen to this. I'm gonna pause my commentary for like 10 seconds and listen to the sound of this water. Now that sound reminds me of times where me and my family would be vacationing in Banff, and we would go to these waterfall areas, and we'd just sit there listening to the water falling. It was just an amazing sound. I just really like the sound of water falling. It's one of my favorite sounds in the world. That's why I like rain. That's why I like Vancouver. An electrical symbol matched with the cell symbolism of earlier, so he's trying to, I think, unite the mechanical and biological aspects of life into one single overriding driving force. It's like this was destined to happen. Once again, nice palette shift, nice usage of color, and again, just driving you along with light sources and everything. Where does this go? I think this leads to a dead end. It might. Or does it lead somewhere? Wasn't I just here? Oh god, did I just go in circles? Forgive me, viewer. Okay, so, yeah, I did go in circles. I meant to look this way, and I knew there was a dead end here. I just went down the wrong way. Okay, moving on with our lives. Cinematic shot. Oh god, just look at this chamber. It's a master class, my friend, of art design. And back up to get a nice little shot of that. And again, effective use of light as a shorthand for let's go this way. And since the candles act as beacons... Oh! Damn it. Okay, I'm gonna fast forward through this part for you viewers so you don't have to suffer through that again, because you do move at a glacial pace in this game. It's to be expected, so... Zoom! German, ladies and gentlemen. Anyways, so now we're back. So I made it back to the top of this waterfall. Don't slip off now. Man, the water actually does push you. Slightly. This is a very convenient cave system. I just gotta say it. Of note is the fact that besides the candles, there aren't really any other elements of civilization in these caves. It's like they were almost unexplored until this narrator fellow went in and splotched paint all over the place. That's in stark contrast to the other caves, and of course the buildings scattered around the rest of the island. So I wonder if this is just a journey into... if this cave system is almost a journey into the subconscious of this narrator as he progresses through.
I'm traversing my own death throes. The infection in my leg is an oil rig that dredges black muck up from deep inside my bones. I swallow fistfuls of diazepam and paracetamol to stay conscious. The pain flows through me like an underground sea.
So he just described the medications that he was taking. I'm wondering if some of these are actually the chemical components that make up some of those medications that he is indeed taking. Whoa, well, I got visually confused there again. Sorry. So this area is largely empty of anything useful, but it is calming to walk through it nonetheless. So yes, the frame rate is indeed chugging in this area, but you know what? I can kind of forgive that. It's like, it's only dipping by small amounts, so you can definitely notice some jank. Even I suspect you're even able to see this on YouTube, but this is a very demanding game, so forgive me. Now, I don't know if this diagram here differs in any real sense from any of the other diagrams we've seen so far, but once again, repetition of the mechanical motif. Oh, so the water does carry you. Oh. I just wanted to test that out. Oh, it's actually very hard to go against the tide here. Yeah, go. I wonder what this stands for. I mean, look at that, Jesus! Wow, that is... Whew. I am in awe. The Chinese room. I am in awe. I just have to say, wow, that was... Ugh. That would make a good screenshot if I had 1080p footage. What, another medical diagram? Or chemical diagram? Another definite stop. An unstoppable force meets an immovable object, maybe? Okay, I promise I won't ramble on too much about those symbols, because they are... I won't say recycled, but they do prop up prominently, so it's hard for people to really miss those. Okay, I'm not gonna... Since I've already established that this area of the game is essentially empty, it's just Very, very good eye candy. Boom, 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 boom. Now, a lot of people have been discussing the merit of games like this. It's like, these aren't even games. Total Biscuit even chimed in on the subject, but he also posed a very good point. He said in one of his more recent videos, in defense of definitions, specific definitions actually was the title of the video, he said that just because he said it was not a game, that doesn't necessarily mean it was meant as a bad thing. Now, I believe Dear Esther is a game. There are clear interactions you have with the game world that just affect the outcome of it. It's like, in small ways, yes, it's like very, very subtle narrative ways. It's like you trigger different meanings each time you go through. But it is a game because it's digital as well. That's one of the defining features of video games, right? They're digital. It's not like an interactive art piece, which is analog. No, this is a video game. So, it's digital, it has interactive elements, it's a video game. That doesn't settle the debate, of course. I'm not claiming to settle the debate, but I do believe that Dear Esther fulfills every category for a game. It's just not a very mechanically dense game, which is what I think a lot of people tend to hang up on when they describe games. It's like, oh, it needs mechanics. It needs a lot of them in order to be called a game. Maybe. Tree of Life. There, just to make it even more apparent. Tree of Life crossed with biological cell diagrams, I think. And here's another little good moment here. Oh, wow. I can't tell if these are diamonds or not.
This is a drowned man's face reflected in the moonlit waters. It can only be a dead shepherd who has come to drunk drive you home.
Now, you know what I said before, if you could not actually see yourself in the waters? I think, I'm not quite sure how to analyze that. Maybe I'll leave that to smarter people than me, or more attentive people than me, but you can't see your reflection at all in this game. You still have some slight physical effects on the game world, such as ripples, but beyond that, you're essentially just a disembodied soul wandering through this game world. I don't know what that means. It looks like another mechanical engineering symbol, but I have exhausted all my knowledge of that subject on earlier diagrams. I just want to showcase this area one last time. Very, very good use of reflections in this area. It's a very visually unique part of this game too. So it seems you can't actually go up there. It's just another light beckoning you towards something. Maybe this is the last real glimpse of you leaving something behind. Just gonna zoom in. Anyways. Are these diamonds? Well, I don't know what these are, but very visually striking nonetheless. Behold, Damascus is taken. Damascus is taken, and this is where the symbols all seem to collide into each other. Mechanical is mixing with the biological, the chemical with the biological and mechanical. It's all just colliding together into this massive kind of like piece. Way from being a day. Away from being a day. Away from being Aki. Huh. I actually can't read that last word very well. Oh well. And it shall be a ruinous head. And it shall be a ruinous heap of bodies and stuff, away from being a day. besides the lighthouse itself, I'm gonna retract some of the stuff I've said, but definitely this is taking a lot of thematic themes from around the First World War. This definitely feels like a game that could have been based just a couple of years after it, because it would fit in thematically with the depressed state of the narrator, because the world was depressed after World War One. Let's not kid ourselves. That was a horrific event. Games like Valiant Hearts tried to tackle it to no success at all earlier this year. But I do see advanced generator technology next to the beacon of light. So it could be that this takes place quite a while after World War One. Possibly in modern times as well, but this could be an old man, the narrator, but who knows. I'm just trying to interpret what I see in this game, what I can interact with by looking at. But I just want to note that Damascus is mentioned quite a lot in this for some reason, and I'm trying to imagine why. So the only thing I can come up with is the World War I reference when the Ottoman Empire lost it to the T.E. Lawrence and the British forces. This is the longest section of the game. It's like it's a very claustrophobic space. It doesn't have as much like open kind of like appeal like the other levels, but still very, very visually stunning. But it's hard to find stuff to talk about in this section because it all kind of like blends together. It's not to say that it's like boring or anything, this section of the game, as relatively compared to the rest of the game, but I just want to point out that's why I may have been a bit more silent than usual when walking through this section, because it's a long and involved part of the game. It really is. So I don't think you can actually, yeah, so you fall down this hole. And then this happens. I'm just gonna zoom in there. Trying to find the location that this takes place in. To southwest, Western Services, Portishead, Portable Dock. But yes, obviously this is the place where the crash took place. And this is where paramedics tried to save someone. It could be Esther, it could be the narrator. But obviously there's some reason why this guy is like looking at this right now. And it looks like scattered all over this is money. I don't know what that means in relation to the rest of the narrative, but can't ignore the fact that that exists. So at this point you can start moving up. And then this gorgeous track starts. Like I said, the main interpretation I get out of this, beyond any of the finer details I may have tried to interpret from any of the symbols laying around this cave system and the rest of the game, is this is a suicide note of a very, very sick in both mind and body man. And he's trying to accept his fate, the inevitableness of it. He believes heavily in fate, heavily in destiny, from what I can gather. And this is him moving towards his inevitable fate, which is his death. And he views that as an act of going towards his inevitable fate as somehow an act of freedom. It's a philosophical bent, I know. It's like you get into some very, very deep waters. You could end up reaching farther than maybe you intended to go with this game, or that it deserves. But I can totally sympathize with this game's philosophical kind of like bent, and it leaves just enough to interpretation where you can sort of like try and fill in all the details yourself, which a lot of games could stand to do a bit. I know there are a few games that spell everything out. It's like Skyrim, for instance. It spells a lot of things out and doesn't leave a lot to interpretation. It's all just blunt little narratives, and Skyrim is still good. It's amazing. It'll probably be played 100 years from now because it's that good. But it's just one of those instances where sometimes some stories could be vague to their benefit rather than to their detriment. So we'll just adjust that horizon. Another nice use of candles. And then you get that shot. This is the final section of the game, by the way, viewers, if you've been keeping up. Whoa, come on.
I wish I could have known Donnelly in this place. We would have had so much to debate. Did he paint these stones or did I? Who left the pots in the hut by the jetty? Who formed the museum under the sea? Who fell silently to his death into the frozen waters? Who erected this godforsaken aerial in the first place? Did this whole island rise to the surface of my stomach, forcing the gulls to take flight?
Obviously, with the mental illnesses that this poor man is suffering through. It also, like, leaves a lot of vague, kind of like declarations and interpretations for the player to maneuver their own wit through. Now, you can see, I don't know if you can see this, viewer, but I can see, I don't know if those are Aurora Borealis, but those look like jet trails. Like the trails of a fighter or a passenger jet. I don't know what those represent, but they're there. I can see them. So you can eventually climb over these rocks. I'm just trying to get back up so we can get the optimal view for the situation. I'll just walk around this area. Come on. Once again, another shout out to the art design. I mean, like, every scene I've been looking at, some of the more visually striking things, they remind me of master pieces from painters from the 1800s, you know, the realist and the impressionists. My favorite artist of all time in terms of painters is William Turner. He made absolutely gorgeous fucking paintings. I would almost describe it as shoegaze paintings. It's like the kind of visuals you would expect from a shoegaze album if it were put into visual form. But every scene in this game is composed almost like a painting, and it's quite something to look at. Sometimes, I'm just going to expand on what I said earlier about the vagueness of a game being to its benefit rather than its detriment. Sometimes you just don't need to explain stuff. Sometimes you just need to present stuff. And leave it up to the viewer, player, reader. Show, don't tell. I'm just going to position this moon. Oh, wait, I gotta adjust the horizon, sorry. And here we go. The light at the end of the pier. Ha, ha, ha. I get it. I get it. So what? I think that's Aurora Borealis or Boreali. I don't know what the plural or past tense or whatever wording you would use for that. The light at the end of the desecrated pier. The light you can never reach. You're reaching again, Thoughtful Salt. Well, I'm sorry, okay? So this section of the game, full of candles, full of tiny little details, full of writing on the wall, and if you look up again, another figure on a cliff. Is he reaching out to you? Or is it a she? Is it reaching out to you?
I returned home with a pocket full of stolen ash. Half of it fell out of my coat and vanished into the car's upholstery. But the rest I carefully stowed away in a box I kept in a drawer by the side of my bed. It was never intended as a meaningful act, but over the years it became a kind of talisman. I'd sit still, quite still for hours, just holding the diminishing powder in my palm and noting its smoothness. In time, we will all be worn down into granules, washed into the sea and dispersed.
Once again, the inevitability of fate, of death. Now, I noticed a cave up there. I'm going to try and make my way to that somehow. Just so I can show it to you, the viewers. Lots of candles. Lots of candles. Can you make it? Yes, you can. You can just worm your way around that. And once again, you can, even from when contrasted against the background, you can see that mysterious figure just staring down at you. It's a nice little visual touch, I gotta say. Ah. Car wreck. There we go. This is a guy who got seriously depressed, and once again, as a person who has gone through severe depression in their life a couple of times, I can totally understand what he's going through, this character. And this is actually, I'm slightly embarrassed to admit, viewer, the first time I've actually seen this particular cave in the game, so I'm just going to get a nice cinematic shot of it. The defibrillator used to try and revive her, or this man trying to heal himself, delay the inevitable until he can exit the way he wants to. Food for thought. So I'm going to try and position that in the center screen in one more try. Now, as we approach the end of the game, I of course want to give one big, massive shout out to Jessica Curry's score once again, because it truly is a great score. It's like, it utilizes a lot of classical influences, and it just manages to evoke a lot of emotions. It's a very, very well-made, effective score, and it just works well within the game. Unfortunately, all the soundtrack versions I've come across have glitches at the beginning of them. Like, it's like stutters. It's like, it's like cut off sounds. I don't know why they're there, but they exist, and it's unfortunate because if those sounds weren't there, I think a lot of people would view the soundtrack more highly. But since they're there, well, we kind of have to deal with them now. And yep, that's a skirt. That's Esther. Curiously, this photo frame seems shattered. Did he punch it at one point? There's the aerial. So I'm just going to adjust the horizon so we can get a masterful view of this canyon, and press forward for cinematic glory. Alright, on to the end of the game. Now, you'll notice as we wind up these paths and as we visit this one little area off to the side, there's a lot of writing alongside the walls, and we'll try and interpret those as we go. Obviously, I'm not the designer of this game, I'm not the writer of the story, so I don't know the full details of what happened, but I'll try and interpret them through my lens the best I can, and hopefully give you an image of what I think about this game. How did he get these pieces of the car here? Did he transport them on a boat? Did he loot them from the crates? But this car wreck right here, the pieces of the wreck, they're memorialized. He cannot let go of this incident. Probably for good reason. And another shot, because it's just good to do so. Alright. Now, a lot of these candles seem to be nonsensically placed, but they actually do a good job of leading the player no matter which direction around that big rock they go, so... Like I said,
there were chemical diagrams on the posters on the walls on the waiting room. It seemed appropriate at the time. Still life abstractions of the processes which had already begun to break down your nerves and your muscles in the next room. I crammed diazepam as I once crammed for chemistry examinations. I am revising my options for a long and happy life.
Light from heaven shone around him. Is that a biblical quote? I'm not quite sure. Light from heaven shone around him. What is that? I'll check it out on the way back, but I just want to showcase this one area over here.
From here, I can see my armada. I collected all the letters I'd ever meant to send to you, if I'd have ever made it to the mainland, but had instead collected at the bottom of my rucksack, and I spread them out along the lost beach. Then I took each and every one, and I folded them into boats. I folded you into the creases, and then, as the sun was setting, I set the fleet to sail. Shattered into 21 pieces, I consigned you to the Atlantic, and I sat here until I'd watched all of you sink.
Saw flashes of something there. What was that? Yes, the aerial. You can see.
Come back.
You can see the aerial in the flashes of stuff that he's seeing, or you can see the beacon itself. It's almost like he doesn't want you to die there. That's why he says come back, and he brings you back to the shoreline, because he can't bring himself to end it there. It has to be there. It's another instance of, I suppose you could call it player death, but the narrative continues. On a sudden, a light from heaven shone around him, and he fell to the ground. Rebirth. Rebirth indeed. Yes, I wanted to check out that one area. Now, in Emergent Exploration, I noticed earlier I mentioned one of the requirements for the genre is that player death is not an irrevocable end to the player narrative. the narrative of this continued. It was actually a bit masterful how they managed to pull that off. And the 2 times you see me die in this video, going down the hole and drowning, you don't actually die. The narrator wants you to hear the rest of the story. So he brings you back, because he doesn't want it to end there. He wants it to end on his terms. Now you could argue, well, that's still kind of a death, you know? Yeah, it kind of is, but the effects of it were so minimal, so non-existent, that it almost isn't a death. So like, there's one other game in this genre that I can pinpoint that where you can actually almost die, but the reset, the consequence of that is so minimal. So like, it's almost non-existent. Like, you basically just start 5 feet from where you died, because the level where you die is, where your air quotes die, is an incredibly small. Oh, those are seagulls. Oh, that looked like phosphorescent paint. Seagulls. Dead seagulls. Could it be representing Donnelly, Esther, and the narrator? Very, very curious use of the seagulls there. But this narrator wants you to see things through to the end. It is a suicide note. That's what it is. A soul trying to contemplate its existence and trying to go on its own terms. That is what I believe Dear Esther is. The beacon of red light. The white lines carved into the cliffs, painted on. The utter isolation of the island.
When Paul keeled over dead on the road to Damascus, they resuscitated him by hitting him in the chest with stones gathered by the roadside. He was lifeless for 21 minutes, certainly long enough for the oxygen levels in his brain to have decreased and caused hallucinations and delusions of transcendence. I'm running out of painkillers, and the moon has become almost unbearably bright.
So once again, I noticed, I talked about earlier in the very start of this, that the kind of like vagueness of the definition of who exactly we're playing, who exactly are we in this narrative? Are we the narrator? Are we an entity who is reading his diaries? Are we his soul, not him, but his soul, reliving the last moments of his life on this island? Reading his own thoughts to himself, contemplating his own existence. It's interesting to note that once this figure disappears, the writing starts up again.
I've begun my voyage in a paper boat without a bottom. I will fly to the moon in it. I've been folded along a crease in time, a weakness in the sheet of life. Now you've settled on the opposite side of the paper to me. I can see your traces in the ink that soaks through the fiber, the pulped vegetation. When we become waterlogged and the cage disintegrates, we will intermingle. When this paper aeroplane leaves the cliff edge and carves parallel vapor trails in the dark, we will come together.
Beautiful. That was, I have no words for that. That was something, that was an incredibly moving little segment right there. And as he was proceeding on his journey, nice. The first thing the writing says, the first thing you can read after going to that little candle over there, that candle campsite where the mysterious figure was, and he was proceeding on his journey. He has come near to Damascus. And he was...
If only Donnelly had experienced this, he would have realized he was his own shoreline, as am I. Just as I am becoming this island, so he became his syphilis, retreating into the burning synapses, the stones, the infection.
And he was 3 days without sight, and neither did he eat nor drink. I just want to notice the kind of like hellish aspect of this little section. This man is being bombarded on both sides by his thoughts, and look at that color scheme right over there. Does that not evoke kind of like a frightening, kind of like almost hellish kind of like atmosphere to you? The distinct reds contrasted with the dark blues. It just reminds me of hell right now. It's kind of scary. Frame rate jitter there. And we're almost up the mountain.
There are headlights reflected in these retinas. Too long in the tunnels of my island without a bottom. The sea creatures have risen to the surface, but the gulls are not here to carry them back to their nests. I've become fixed, open and staring, an eye turned on itself. I've become an infected leg whose tracking lines form a perfect map of the junctions of the M5. I will take the exit at mid-thigh and plummet to my Esther.
Yes, long suicide note. I can't emphasize that enough. I wonder if you can actually fall. It probably doesn't kill you, but at this point the narrator would probably restart you. But the narrative would continue, so. Interrupted briefly. This bunker. Another mixing of the mechanical with the chemical. To a person like this, the distinctions would not matter. Life is just a unified kind of like whole. No matter what its origins. Now, I actually find it very, very difficult to read these lines on the mountain. So, and it came to pass that as I made my journey and was come right unto Damascus, at around noon, suddenly the shone from the heavens a great light round about me. Okay. How could not see.
Blind with panic, deaf with the roar of the caged traffic, heart stopped on the road to Damascus, Paul sat at the roadside hunched up like a gull, like a bloody gull. As useless and as doomed as a syphilitic cartographer, a dying goatherd, an infected leg, a kidney stone, blocking the traffic bound for Sanford and Exeter. He was not drunk, Esther. He was not drunk at all. All his roads and his tunnels and his paths led inevitably to this moment of impact. This is not a recorded natural condition. He should not be sat there with his chemicals and his circuit diagrams. He should not be sat there at all.
There. I could not like put Dear Esther more perfectly than that statement. The inevitability of fate. This man is accepting his, denying the inevitability for others, but really, Dear Esther, the inevitability of fate. Sooner or later, you're gonna get to the top of that beacon. The glory of that light, being more candles, being led by the hand of men, of them. This is a very, very bitter man. But he's going out on his own terms, and you gotta respect that. Here with me. Were with me. That were with me. I came into Damascus. His one point of contact with the outside world outlined by Damascus below it, I guess. And that looks like a modern kind of like broadcasting array. So there's definitely...
We will leave twin vapor trails in the air, white lines etched into these rocks.
Twin vapor trails in the air. I guess you could interpret those twin vapor trails as being like a plane sent to rescue him or something at the very end of this. I know I'm reaching for something, but I'm just trying to contemplate the meaning of those twin vapor trails, and you can see them right there outlined against the sky. But it's funny that he would comment on them at this instant. So, seeing as what happens in the next few minutes, could he have been rescued by a plane at the last minute? Who knows? But I choose to view this as the culmination of a long suicide note. Now, what was I saying earlier? Damn it. I forgot. It's now the end section of this game, and the first time I played this game, this brought me to tears, I just gotta say.
Dear Esther, I have burnt my belongings, my books, this death certificate. Mine will be written all across this island. Who was Jakobsen? Who remembers him? Donnelly has written of him, but who was Donnelly? Who remembers him? I have painted, carved, hewn, scored into this space all that I could draw from him. There will be another to these shores to remember me. I will rise from the ocean like an island without bottom, come together like a stone, become an aerial, a beacon, that they will not forget you. We've always been drawn here. One day the gulls will return and nest in our bones and our history. I will look to my left and see Esther Donnelly flying beside me. I will look to my right and see Paul Jakobsen flying beside me. They will leave white lines carved into the air to reach the mainland, where help will be sent.
So, this ending segment you have no control over. But, my god, just the culmination of the music, the shadow of this gull, him taking flight, his rebirth. There's a lot of things you could read into in this final cutscene, and just the way it ends, it's amazing. I just want to point out the sort of demonic, almost chanting that's been recurring throughout this game, suddenly popping up here. I think this is meant to provide some sort of like dissonance to counterbalance his, I wouldn't call it optimism, but the finality, his joy sort of finally letting go and being reborn through death or something. I think that little bit at the end with those chants is meant to sort of act as sort of a tiny little bit of reboot to that notion. But that's Dear Esther. I hope this journey was as informative for you as it was for me. I certainly learned a lot of new things. I encountered a lot of gameplay elements, sections that I had, quite frankly, never noticed the first 5 or 6 times I played this game. So, wow. Just wow. There's a lot of stuff you can get out of this game, and I'm going to exit this because this black screen actually doesn't end. Exit to main menu. Yes. Credits. So we shall go into the credits. But there's just so much you can read into this game. It's like your own personal philosophies, your own experiences in life. There's just so much you can do with this. Vagueness to its benefit. Nigel Carrington, for your performance as the narrator, you did a hell of a job. I just gotta say. Thanks to Jonathan Blow, creator of Braid, another game that a lot of people call pretentious. But when you're dealing with emotions as personal as depression, anger, there's a lot of instances where people just won't understand it. It's the same reaction a lot of people give to games like Depression Quest, or a lot of the Emergent Exploration games I'm going to be exploring later on in this series. It's very hard for other people to put themselves in other people's shoes. But hopefully games like this and Depression Quest and other Emergent Exploration games will help people understand other people. It's one of the defining characteristics of art, I think, is helping people understand other people through interaction with the medium. Thank you very much for watching this, and I will see you next time with another game in this new series that we're just gonna be going through a lot of games here. I'm planning on tackling Jazzpunk, Stanley Parable, hopefully a couple other titles, like Tale of Tales has a few games that predate this, actually, like The Path and The Graveyard. I hope to be exploring those. But until then, I shall see you next time.